You know that feeling when you accomplish something important, and the first person you think about telling is someone who probably won't react the way you hope? Not cruel, not dismissive, just flat. Or maybe it shows up in quieter ways. You find it hard to talk about what you're feeling. When someone gets emotional around you, your body stiffens slightly. You become practical, solution-focused, calm on the outside. Somewhere along the way, you learned how to handle life without making too much noise about it. Most people never notice this, but there's a certain kind of person who prides themselves on being low maintenance, independent, not needy. They don't ask for much. They don't expect much either. And the world tends to reward that. You might have been described as mature for your age, or resilient, or easy to raise. No drama, no big emotional swings. From the outside, that looks like strength. But sometimes it doesn't feel like strength. Sometimes it feels like distance you didn't consciously choose. There's a pattern here that people rarely explain correctly. It often begins with emotionally distant parents. Not abusive, not necessarily unkind, just unavailable in subtle, consistent ways. They provided. They showed up physically. But when it came to feelings, there was a gap. And there's more going on here than people realize. When a child expresses emotion, their brain is looking for co-regulation. The nervous system is immature. It needs another nervous system to help it settle. Eye contact, tone of voice, gentle acknowledgement, these signals teach the brain that emotions are safe and manageable. Researchers studying attachment and early development have found that when emotional responses are repeatedly minimized, redirected, or ignored, the child adapts. Not dramatically, quietly. If excitement is met with indifference, it shrinks. If sadness is met with "you're fine," it tightens. If fear is met with logic instead of comfort, it learns to bypass the body altogether. Over time, the nervous system becomes efficient. It stops sending signals that go unanswered. That efficiency can look like emotional independence, but neurologically, it's often a protective adaptation. The brain's threat detection system doesn't only react to danger, it reacts to disconnection. For a child, emotional disconnection can register as a subtle form of stress. Not enough to create chaos, just enough to teach the body, handle this alone. So you learned to self-soothe early. You learned not to expect a big reaction. You learned that vulnerability doesn't necessarily lead to closeness. None of this happens consciously. It's not a decision. It's conditioning. If this is resonating, you might notice something else. When someone is very expressive with you now, affectionate, emotionally open, it can feel unfamiliar, maybe even uncomfortable, not because you don't want closeness, but because your nervous system didn't practice it in real time. And if you've ever felt quietly seen here, consider staying connected. Like and subscribe if you want to keep exploring these patterns together. There's something powerful about recognizing yourself in ways that feel accurate rather than dramatic. Children of emotionally distant parents often grow into adults who are deeply self-reliant. They don't panic easily. They think before reacting. They can sit with discomfort longer than most. But that steadiness has roots. Developmentally, a child adapts to the environment they're given. If emotional expression doesn't change the outcome, the brain reallocates energy. It invests in thinking instead of feeling, in anticipating instead of asking. Over years, this creates a particular internal structure. You may be very good at analyzing your emotions, naming them, understanding them conceptually, but feeling them fully, in your body, in front of someone else, that can feel exposed. And here's the part that's often misunderstood. Emotionally distant parents are not always cold by intention. Many of them were raised in environments where emotions were unsafe or irrelevant. Their own nervous systems learned to compress feelings in order to function. Distance can be inherited without anyone meaning harm. This isn't about blame. It's about patterns. Different families operate on different emotional frequencies. Some are expressive and intense. Others are contained and quiet. Neither is inherently superior. Both come with trade-offs. A highly expressive environment may teach emotional fluency, but struggle with regulation. A distant one may teach composure, but struggle with intimacy. There isn't a right style. There are only adaptations. The surprising layer is this: the very distance that protected you might also be the reason people experience you as stable, grounded, calm in crisis. When others are overwhelmed, you're often the steady one. When emotions escalate, you de-escalate. You don't dissolve under pressure. That isn't nothing. But there's a quiet cost, too. Sometimes you feel like you're watching your own life from a slight distance, participating but not fully immersed. You might crave closeness deeply, yet struggle to initiate it in ways that feel natural. It can create a paradox, longing for emotional depth while instinctively keeping your guard just high enough to avoid depending on anyone too much. That guard isn't evidence of being broken. It's evidence of learning. The nervous system doesn't choose what feels safe based on ideals. It chooses based on repetition. If self-containment was repeated, self-containment becomes safety. And safety is powerful. Healing, if it happens, doesn't require becoming someone else. It often begins with recognizing that your distance once made sense, that your restraint wasn't a flaw. It was intelligent. There's something quietly dignified about a person who learned to hold themselves together without much guidance. There's strength in that. At the same time, the capacity for closeness hasn't disappeared. It may just need different conditions, slower pacing, consistent reassurance, relationships where emotion isn't demanded but gently invited. You are not less capable of love. You may simply express it in subtler ways, through reliability, through problem solving, through presence, rather than performance. And if you've ever wondered why certain interactions leave you feeling inexplicably tired, or why praise doesn't quite land, or why conflict feels disproportionate to the moment, it's not random, it's patterned. Patterns can soften once they're understood. You're not dramatic for noticing the distance. You're not ungrateful for wanting more than provision. Emotional presence is a legitimate need. So is autonomy. Both can coexist. If parts of this felt familiar, there are likely other layers to your story worth exploring. The way you attach, the way you handle conflict, the way you respond to affection. There's more going on in you than meets the surface. And sometimes the simple act of recognizing where it began is enough to start feeling a little closer to yourself.